Caught my wife cheating at her summer writing workshop, so I hired a PI, got evidence, and disappeared without a trace before she returned. Before I go any further, drop a comment right now and tell me where are you watching from? My name is Marcus Chen, though most people know me as MC, never Mark. I'm an engineer working for a large national technology firm, specializing in security systems and digital monitoring protocols. I value honesty above almost everything else, and I have absolutely zero patience for people who try to deceive me. Which makes what happened next all the more painful. I'd been married to my wife Diana for 25 years. A quarter of a century. She teaches high school English and has spent our entire marriage dreaming of becoming a published author. Our two daughters, Sophie and Rachel, were both away at college, Sophie studying at Brown University, Rachel at Boston University. With both girls finally out of the house, I'd been looking forward to this new chapter. Just the two of us, reconnecting like we did when we first fell in love. I imagined quiet dinners, weekend trips, finally having time for each other again after all those years of raising kids. That fantasy died on a cool April evening. I was outside finishing some yard work, getting the garden ready for spring planting. The kitchen window was open, and I heard Diana's voice drift out into the evening air. At first, I didn't pay much attention. She was on the phone, probably talking to one of her friends from that writing group she's always going on about. But then her tone changed. It became softer, more intimate. Almost conspiratorial in a way that made my hands still on the gardening tools. "I can't wait," she said, and there was something in her voice I didn't recognize. Something I'd never heard before in 25 years. 6 whole weeks with no obligations, no duties, and nobody expecting me back home. I froze completely, my hand still gripping the gardening shears. Nobody expecting me back home. That phrase hung in the air like smoke that wouldn't dissipate. The way she said it, there was excitement there, anticipation, almost a giddiness that I hadn't heard in years. I'd been married to this woman for a quarter of a century, and I'd never heard her sound quite like that when talking about me or our life together. I walked inside, trying to act casual, trying not to let on that I'd heard anything. She immediately ended the call. Just cut it off mid-sentence, which was the first real red flag. "Oh, honey, I didn't know you were done out there," she said, setting her phone down on the counter with a little too much emphasis. Her smile was bright and broad, but it didn't quite reach her eyes the way genuine smiles do. "That was just Patricia from my writing group. We were talking about school wrapping up soon and summer plans." "That's nice," I said, washing my hands at the sink. I didn't look at her directly, couldn't bring myself to yet. Something in my gut was twisting, sending warning signals I couldn't ignore. "What were you saying about 6 weeks?" "Oh, nothing important, just talking about summer plans and things like that," she said quickly, already moving toward the living room. Too quickly, I noted. The kind of quick movement people make when they want to end a conversation. "Are you hungry? I can start dinner if you want." I stood at that sink, water running over my hands long after they were clean, and felt the first crack form in the foundation of my marriage. But I didn't say anything more. Not yet. Instead, I waited until she went to bed that night, and then I did something I'd never done before in 25 years of marriage, something I never thought I'd have reason to do. I checked our phone records. AT&T keeps everything online, incoming calls, outgoing calls, text messages, all timestamped and logged with detailed information. I pulled up our account on the computer and scrolled to that evening. Found the call she'd taken while I was outside working in the garden. 47 minutes long. My hands started shaking as I looked at the number displayed on the screen. It wasn't Patricia's number. Not even close. It was Vincent's. Vincent. That pretentious writer from her writing group, the one who'd looked at me during their last meeting at our house and asked, "So, Andy, what's your profession?" with this condescending little smirk on his face. I'd corrected him, "It's Marcus, not Andy," but he just waved his hand dismissively like my name didn't really matter. Like I didn't matter. And now my wife had spent 47 minutes on the phone with him, talking about 6 weeks with nobody waiting for her to come home. I sat in the glow of that computer screen until 2 in the morning, just staring at that phone number. I kept telling myself there had to be an explanation, had to be some reasonable answer. Maybe she'd called Patricia and Patricia was at Vincent's house for some group planning thing. Maybe it was a conference call situation and she'd simplified it for my benefit. Maybe. The mind does interesting things when it's trying to protect you from a painful truth. But deep down, in that place where you can't lie to yourself no matter how hard you try, I knew. When you've been married as long as I had, you develop instincts about these things. You learn to read the small signs, the micro-expressions, the subtle shifts in energy. And every instinct I had was screaming that something was very, very wrong. A week passed, and I tried to act normal, tried to push down the growing dread. Then Diana made her announcement. We were having dinner, nothing special, just pasta and salad on a weeknight, and she just casually mentioned, almost like an afterthought, "Oh, by the way, I got accepted to that writing workshop in Illinois I applied for. 6 weeks this summer, mid-June through late July. Isn't that exciting?" I set down my fork carefully, keeping my voice neutral. "Writing workshop? You didn't mention applying for anything like that." "Oh, I'm sure I did," she said, though her eyes didn't meet mine. "It's a really prestigious program at the University of Illinois. 6 weeks of intensive workshops, seminars with published authors, dedicated writing time. It could really help my career as a writer." "That's wonderful, honey," I said carefully, watching her face. "Maybe I could come with you for a weekend or two. We could explore the area together, make it a little getaway." The way her face changed, it was subtle, but I caught it. A flicker of panic, quickly masked with a practiced smile. "Oh, that won't work at all. It's really intensive, you know. I'll be in workshops from early morning to late evening, and then I'll need quiet time to write. You'd just be sitting around bored in a hotel room all day. It wouldn't be fair to you at all." "I really wouldn't mind," I pressed gently. "I could bring my laptop, do some work remotely. We could at least have dinners together in the evenings." "Marcus, please." Now there was an edge creeping into her voice. "This is important to me. I need to focus completely. I can't be worried about entertaining you while I'm trying to work on my craft." I held up my hands in surrender, not wanting to push further yet. Okay. I understand. 6 weeks is a long time, but if it's important to you, then I support it completely." Her whole demeanor shifted immediately, became sunny again. "Actually, I have a surprise for you. I know you'll be missing me while I'm gone, so I got you something special." She pulled out an envelope from the kitchen counter and handed it across the table, looking so pleased with herself it almost hurt to watch. Inside were tickets. Expensive tickets. To a premier fishing lodge in northern Canada, for 2 people, scheduled for the exact same dates as her workshop. "I got you and Jake tickets," she said, watching my face for a reaction. "You're always talking about wanting to go on a real fishing trip, somewhere remote and special. This place is supposed to be incredible, remote lodge, pristine lakes, trophy-sized fish. You and Jake can have your guy time while I'm doing my writing thing. Perfect, right?" I looked at those tickets, and something cold settled deep in my chest. She hadn't asked me if I wanted to go. Hadn't asked if those dates worked for me. Hadn't even checked with Jake to see if he was available. She just made the decision, spent what must have been a significant amount of money, and presented it as a thoughtful gift. But it wasn't a gift. It was a removal. She was making absolutely certain I would be nowhere near Illinois while she was there, and she was doing it in a way that made me look ungrateful if I questioned it. "That's very thoughtful," I said, and I meant it to sound grateful, but I could hear the flatness in my own voice. "You really didn't have to spend that kind of money." "I wanted to," she insisted, reaching across to squeeze my hand. "You deserve it. You work so hard, and you've been so supportive of my writing over the years. This way we both get to do something we love this summer." That night, lying in bed beside her, I listened to her breathing in the darkness and tried to make sense of it all. 25 years of marriage. 2 daughters we'd raised together from infancy to adulthood. Thousands of dinners, thousands of conversations, thousands of nights falling asleep in this same bed. And now, listening to her breathe in the darkness, I felt like I was lying next to a complete stranger. But I still wanted to believe in her. I still wanted there to be an innocent explanation for everything. So the next evening, I decided to be direct and honest, to give her a chance to explain. I asked her to sit down with me in the living room. No distractions, no TV playing in the background, just the 2 of us facing each other. And I told her everything I was feeling, calmly, rationally, without accusation in my tone. "Diana, I need to talk to you about something that's been bothering me," I started carefully. "Last week, I overheard part of your phone conversation when I was outside. You mentioned 6 weeks with nobody waiting for you to come home. And when I came inside and asked who you were talking to, you said Patricia. But I checked the phone records, and the call was actually from Vincent's number." I watched her face very carefully. A guilty person would deflect, would attack, would make me the villain for even asking. An innocent person would be confused, maybe a little hurt that I'd checked up on her, but would want to clear up the misunderstanding and reassure me. She chose deflection and attack. "Are you checking up on me?" Her voice went up an octave, face flushing red with what looked like genuine anger. "I cannot believe you're checking our phone records like I'm some kind of criminal under investigation. Do you have any idea how insulting and demeaning that is?" "I'm not accusing you of anything," I said, keeping my voice level and calm. "I'm just asking why you told me it was Patricia when it was actually Vincent." "Because it's none of your business who I talked to on the phone." She was standing now, pacing the room with agitated energy. I don't have to report every single phone call to you, Marcus. This is exactly what I'm talking about. You're suffocating me. I can't even breathe in this marriage anymore. Diana. No. I've never been unfaithful to you, never even looked at another man, and the fact that you would even suggest something like that. She pressed her hand to her chest dramatically, like I'd physically wounded her. I can't even look at you right now. I need space. And just like that, she shut down completely. Went to sleep in the guest room. For the next 7 days, she barely spoke to me. Cold shoulders, one-word answers, the silent treatment in full force. I'm an engineer, I recognize patterns when I see them. And this was textbook manipulation. Punish the person who asks uncomfortable questions, make them feel guilty for having any doubts, train them not to question you again. But here's the thing about the silent treatment, it only works if the other person is desperate to end it, desperate enough to apologize for things they didn't do wrong. After 7 days of cold silence, she suddenly switched tactics completely. Became warm again, affectionate and loving. Made my favorite dinner, bought me a small thoughtful gift, acted like nothing had ever happened. Love bombing, they call it in psychology. Another classic manipulation technique. I smiled and accepted it all graciously, but inside, something had fundamentally shifted. I'd made my decision. The very next day, I called a private investigator. The PI firm came highly recommended by a coworker who'd been through something eerily similar a few years back. When I explained what I needed, 6 weeks of comprehensive surveillance at a workshop in Illinois, the investigator didn't even blink. He'd done this type of thing many times before. We can have operatives enroll as audit students in the workshop itself, he explained over the phone in a professional, matter-of-fact tone. They'll attend the same sessions, eat in the same cafeteria, stay in the same dormitory complex. We'll gather photographic evidence, audio recordings where legally permissible, witness statements, digital records. The complete package. But I have to be honest with you, Mr. Chen, this isn't going to be cheap. 6 weeks of round-the-clock surveillance, multiple operatives, specialized equipment, comprehensive documentation. We're looking at a very significant investment. Money isn't the issue here, I said firmly. I need to know the absolute truth, whatever that truth turns out to be. What are you hoping we'll find? I was quiet for a long moment, then said honestly, I'm hoping to be completely wrong about everything. I'm hoping my wife is going to this workshop purely to write and nothing else, and at the end of 6 weeks, I'll owe you a very large check and a very sincere apology for doubting her. But I don't think that's what you're going to find. Understood completely, the PI said. We'll be in touch with regular updates. Meanwhile, Diana kept up her excited chatter about the upcoming workshop. She'd bring it up at dinner every few nights, talking animatedly about which famous authors were going to be guest speakers, which specific seminars she wanted to attend, how transformative this experience was going to be for her writing career and personal growth. And every single time she mentioned the workshop, without fail, she'd add something enthusiastic about how excited she was for me to go on my fishing trip. Jake is so thrilled about Canada, she'd say with a bright smile. He told me you two haven't had a proper guys trip in years and years. She hadn't actually talked to Jake about any of this. I knew this for certain because Jake was my closest friend, and he would have mentioned something to me directly. But I played along perfectly, smiled and nodded, said how much I was looking forward to the fishing. All while inside, with each passing day, another small piece of my heart was turning to ice. The day she left for Illinois, I drove her to the shuttle pickup point myself. She had 2 large suitcases and a carry-on bag packed full. 6 weeks worth of clothes, toiletries, books, writing supplies. She was practically bouncing with nervous excitement, checking her phone every few minutes like she was expecting an important message. At the pickup point, I pulled her into what I knew would be our last real hug as husband and wife. Held her close against me. Breathed in the familiar scent of her shampoo one final time, felt the shape of her body in my arms, memorized this moment even though it hurt. And I said quietly, please, Diana. Please don't do anything that could ruin what we have. She pulled back from the embrace, and I saw clear irritation flash across her face. I'm tired of you not trusting me, Marcus. This is getting really old. When I get back from Illinois, we need to have a serious talk about these trust issues of yours. She kissed my cheek quickly, not my lips, I noticed, just my cheek, grabbed her bags with both hands, and walked toward the waiting shuttle. I stood there in the parking lot watching her go, and she never once looked back. Not even a glance over her shoulder. Just climbed onto that shuttle, found a seat, and disappeared from view as it pulled away. Those were the last words my wife ever spoke to me standing in our home. The first report from the private investigator came in on day 1 of the workshop. I was sitting alone in our suddenly too quiet house when the encrypted email notification popped up on my laptop. There were multiple photos attached to the message. My hands were physically shaking as I clicked to open them, not sure I was ready to see what they contained but knowing I had to look. The first image showed my wife's left hand in clear detail. Her left hand, specifically. The hand where her engagement ring and wedding band had sat for 25 years. They were completely gone. Bare finger, pale line where the rings used to be. The second photo showed her at a registration table, filling out paperwork and making herself a name tag. The name tag read Diana Chen and underneath, in smaller handwritten letters, someone had added, recently divorced. The third photo nearly broke me completely. My wife and Vincent, walking across the campus together in bright sunlight. His arm was around her shoulders in an unmistakably intimate way. Her head was tilted toward him, mouth open mid-laugh at something he'd said. They looked comfortable together. Natural. Familiar. Like a couple who'd been together for years, not two people who were supposedly just meeting up at a professional workshop. The PI's accompanying report was clinical, detailed, and devastating. Subject arrived at workshop at approximately 2 p.m. local time. Wedding rings were not visible at any point during initial observation, likely removed during flight. Subject completed registration and immediately sought out target male, Vincent Marsh, previously identified. Physical contact initiated within first hour of arrival. Holding hands observed multiple times. At dinner in campus cafeteria, subjects sat together at small table, excluded others from their conversation, displayed intimate body language. Left cafeteria together at approximately 8 p.m., walked to dormitory complex holding hands openly. Subject introduced herself to multiple other workshop participants as recently divorced, explicitly stated that this workshop represents her fresh start in life. No attempt whatsoever made to conceal relationship with target male from other attendees. Will continue comprehensive surveillance and provide daily updates. I read that report 3 complete times, each word sinking in deeper. Then I looked at the photos again, zooming in on details I didn't want to see but couldn't look away from. There was my wife of 25 years, her hand bare of the rings I'd placed there at our wedding, telling complete strangers she was divorced, laughing with another man like she didn't have a care in the world. I closed the laptop and sat in the dark house for a very long time. That was day 1. I had 41 more days of reports still to receive. Part of me desperately wanted to stop right there, delete the email, call off the PI, pretend I'd never seen any of it. But I'd made a decision when I started this. I needed to see absolutely everything. I needed to know exactly who I'd been married to all these years, who I'd trusted with my entire life. The second week brought audio recordings that were even harder to process. The PI had gotten creative with his approach. One of his female operatives had successfully befriended Diana, positioned herself as a compatible writing buddy who shared similar interests. This operative had suggested they record some of their casual conversations for a podcast project about writer relationships and creative inspiration. Diana had enthusiastically agreed to participate, even signed a proper consent form, thinking she was contributing to some kind of artistic endeavor. She had absolutely no idea those recordings were going straight to me. I sat in my home office late at night, headphones covering my ears, and listened to my wife talk openly and honestly about her affair with another man. That's what it was, I realized as I listened to her animated voice through the speakers. Not a budding romance that was just beginning, not a new connection that was forming. An affair that had been deliberately planned and ongoing for many months before Illinois. Vincent and I have this incredible connection. Diana's voice came through the headphones, excited and more animated than I'd heard her sound in years. It's honestly like nothing I've ever experienced in my entire life. We understand each other on this deep, profound, artistic level that I didn't even know was possible. He sees me, really, truly sees me, as a writer, as an artist with something important to say. Not just as someone's wife or someone's mother or a high school teacher. The operative asked encouragingly, "That sounds wonderful. How long have you two actually been together?" "We've been emotionally connected for almost a full year now," Diana said, and I had to pause the recording right there. A year. A full year of this. I took a deep breath and let it play again. But we had to wait patiently for this workshop opportunity. We desperately needed extended time and space away from complications. You know, away from real life and all its constraints. Now we finally have exactly that, and it's even more amazing than we imagined. "Tell me about your husband, if you don't mind," the operative prompted gently. There was a brief pause, and then Diana said in a thoughtful tone, "Marcus is genuinely a good man. I don't want to paint him as some kind of villain, because he's really not that at all. He's just small. He has small ideas, lives in a small world with small ambitions. He's an engineer, right? So everything in his mind is circuits and measurements and technical specifications. Vincent thinks big. He understands art, beauty, passion, the transcendent human experience. The things that actually matter in life, the things worth living for. I sat there listening to my wife methodically dissect and dismiss our entire marriage for a virtual stranger, and I felt something fundamental inside me die. Not all at once, it was more like a slow frost, spreading gradually through my chest and numbing everything it touched. She continued talking, her voice warm with obvious affection. I showed Vincent some of the text messages between Marcus and me. Just normal, everyday exchanges. And Vincent was absolutely right when he said, "This is how you communicate with your husband? This is so transactional, so completely sterile and lifeless." And he was absolutely correct. Everything with Marcus is practical and mundane. What's for dinner tonight? Can you pick up my dry cleaning? The mortgage payment is due. There's no passion, no poetry, no artistry to any of it. The operative made an encouraging sound, and Diana kept going eagerly. "Vincent sends me real letters," she said, and I could actually hear the smile in her voice. Beautiful handwritten letters, not texts or emails. Real paper and ink. Sometimes poetry. Last month he sent me this absolutely gorgeous passage about how I'm his muse, his inspiration for everything creative, how waiting to finally be with me properly has been absolute torture for him, how soon we'll be completely free to be together. Free. Can you even imagine what that word means to me? I've been waiting my whole entire life to feel this alive, this seen, this valued. The recording continued for another 25 minutes. She talked in detail about their secret meetings over the past months, hotel rooms, she specified, during writing group nights, when I had genuinely believed she was at someone's house workshopping manuscripts and discussing literature. She showed the operative text messages that dated back a full 8 months. 8 solid months of, "I love you more than anything," and, "I can't wait until we can be together properly," and, "Soon we won't have to hide our love anymore." 8 months of elaborate deception. While I was making her breakfast every single morning. While I was doing the laundry and grocery shopping. While I was taking care of the house maintenance, paying all our bills on time, being a faithful, devoted husband who loved her. 8 months of lies stacked on lies. I forced myself to listen to that complete recording 3 times before I could bring myself to save it to my evidence folder and move on to reading the next update. Each time I heard those words, "Marcus is small," another piece of my heart crumbled into dust. By week 4, the private investigator had built an absolutely airtight case. He'd successfully bribed the security guard at the dormitory complex and obtained complete copies of the electronic swipe card access logs. These detailed logs showed exactly which student ID card accessed which specific room at precisely what time, down to the second. Diana's officially assigned room was number 412. Vincent's officially assigned room was number 307. According to the digital records that couldn't lie, Diana's card hadn't accessed room 412 even a single time in 2 full weeks. Not once. Every single swipe of her card was at room 307. Vincent's room. She was living with him completely. The cleaning staff provided detailed written statements as additional evidence. Room 412 remained completely untouched, bed perfectly made, bathroom completely unused, toiletries unpacked, like nobody had ever checked into that room at all. Room 307, on the other hand, very clearly had 2 people living in it full-time. Women's clothes hanging in the closet. Makeup and feminine toiletries in the bathroom. 2 toothbrushes in the holder. 2 sets of everything. The housekeeping staff reported they barely even cleaned that room anymore because the "Do Not Disturb" sign was prominently displayed almost every single day. But the diligent PI didn't stop his investigation there. He'd positioned another operative on their specific floor, posing convincingly as a graduate student attending summer sessions. This operative meticulously documented their predictable daily routine with timestamps. Every single night around 11 p.m., they would enter room 307 together, laughing and talking, holding hands openly. Every single morning around 8 a.m., they would leave together for breakfast in the dining hall, looking rumpled and content and happy. During the day, they were completely inseparable at workshops and seminars. At night, they would kiss goodnight in the hallway before disappearing into his room together. They're not even remotely trying to hide any of this, the PI told me during one of our regular phone check-ins. They're acting exactly like a married couple on vacation. Public displays of affection, finishing each other's sentences, inside jokes, the whole package. "I see," I said. My voice sounded hollow and distant even to my own ears. "Mr. Chen, I have to ask at this point, do you want us to continue the surveillance? We have significantly more than enough evidence for divorce proceedings. Photos, videos, witness statements, digital access logs. Any competent lawyer would tell you this is more than sufficient for court." I looked at the calendar hanging on my wall. 4 more weeks to go until she came home. "No," I said firmly. Keep going with everything. I want absolutely everything. Every lie, every intimate moment, every detail. I want to know exactly who I'm leaving behind forever. Week 5 brought a revelation I genuinely hadn't expected at all. The PI had been digging deeper into Vincent's background and found something extremely interesting. Vincent wasn't just a writer having an affair for passion or love. He was a calculating con artist who'd done this exact thing before, multiple times, and had it down to a science. The PI's tech operative had located Vincent's laptop. He'd carelessly left it unattended at a busy campus coffee shop, and the operative had found it and spent 30 intensive minutes photographing every file and document before turning it into the lost and found, like a good citizen. On that laptop was a detailed spreadsheet. A financial planning spreadsheet. With my wife's full name at the very top. The spreadsheet meticulously calculated Diana's potential divorce settlement with frightening accuracy. My exact annual salary was listed there. He'd somehow found that out, probably from Diana sharing details. The estimated current value of our house. Her teacher's pension fund. Projected alimony payment amounts. It was all there, precisely itemized and calculated like a business investment, like she was a stock portfolio he was analyzing. There were detailed notes in the margins. Teacher benefits package equals excellent health insurance coverage, husband's 401k retirement account equals substantial, house equity after mortgage equals approximately $300k her share. But the most damning piece of evidence was an email the PI found in Vincent's sent folder. It was addressed to a close friend, sent 3 weeks into the workshop. Diana's husband is an engineer at some major tech firm, makes a very solid 6 figures annually. She'll definitely get a nice settlement when this divorce is finalized. Plus she's got that teacher's pension and benefits package. The woman is basically set for life financially, and she doesn't even fully realize it yet. Once we're officially together, I can finally quit this adjunct teaching bullshit that barely pays rent and focus completely on my real work, my real art. She's basically my retirement plan, my meal ticket, and she thinks I'm her romantic muse. It's almost too easy to be believed. I stared at that email for a very long time, reading it over and over. My wife wasn't just having an affair for passion or excitement. She was being systematically played and used. Vincent saw her as nothing more than a meal ticket, a convenient way to fund his lifestyle while he pretended to be a serious artist pursuing his craft. Part of me, a small, dying part that still genuinely loved her despite everything, wanted desperately to warn her. Wanted to send her this evidence immediately and say, look what he really thinks of you. Look what he's really after. This isn't love, this is manipulation. But then I would remember those audio recordings in brutal detail. Her voice saying with such conviction, Marcus is small. Her laughing freely about showing Vincent our most private text messages. Her describing our entire 25-year marriage as sterile and transactional and meaningless. She had made her choice deliberately and repeatedly. Now I was making mine with equal clarity. The PI also tracked down Vincent's ex-girlfriend, a woman named Jennifer who lived quietly in Ohio. She'd agreed to provide a formal written statement, and reading it made my blood run absolutely cold. Vincent dated me 3 years ago, Jennifer's statement read. He pursued me incredibly hard, said I was his muse, that I inspired his creative work like no one else ever had. I was recently divorced at the time, emotionally vulnerable and lonely. He moved into my house after only 2 months of dating. For a full year, he lived in my house, ate my food, used my car, and claimed to be working on his novel. He drained my savings, not all at once in obvious ways, but gradually, steadily. Can you cover gas money this week, baby? The electric bill is due. Can you spot me this month? I need a new laptop for my writing, and I'm just a bit short. After a year, I was completely broke and drowning in debt. That's when he suddenly left. Said he needed to find himself and focus on his art in a new environment. I later found out through mutual friends that he'd done the same thing to the woman before me and probably others. This is his pattern, his system. He deliberately targets emotionally vulnerable women, preferably ones with financial stability or money, and he systematically uses them until they're completely used up. I added Jennifer's statement to the rapidly growing file of evidence against my wife and her lover. Diana thought she was living out some grand romantic fantasy, thought she'd found her artistic soulmate. She had no idea whatsoever that she was just the latest target in a con man's ongoing scheme. Week 6, the final week, brought the documentary footage that sealed everything. One of the operatives had posed convincingly as a documentary filmmaker doing a day in the life of workshop writers project for a film school thesis. Diana and Vincent had enthusiastically agreed to be filmed. They'd signed proper release forms without reading them carefully. Smiled genuinely for the camera. And for hours and hours, they'd let themselves be filmed doing absolutely everything together. walking across campus holding hands in broad daylight, kissing by the library steps, sitting together in workshops, their chairs pulled intimately close, whispering constantly to each other, going to dinner together, and yes, even entering his dorm room together late at night. All of it captured on camera. All of it consensual. All of it with their full knowledge and permission. They had no idea that footage was being sent directly to me in real time. But perhaps the most devastating evidence came directly from Diana herself. The writing buddy operative had suggested they collaborate on a short story together for the workshop's final anthology. Diana had absolutely loved this idea. Together, they'd written a story titled Renaissance. The story was transparently, painfully autobiographical. The main character was a high school English teacher named Donna who'd been married for 25 years to an engineer named Michael. At a summer writing workshop, Donna meets a writer named Victor, and they begin a passionate affair. The story included explicit intimate scenes, emotional revelations, and Donna's detailed internal justifications for the affair. Key passages from the story that I can still recite from memory. Donna had been married to Michael for a quarter century. He was a good man, reliable, steady, competent, responsible. But he lived in a world of measurements and specifications, of problems with clear solutions and questions with definite answers. He didn't understand the beauty of uncertainty, the poetry of unanswerable questions. Victor understood. That first night in Victor's room, with the summer rain against the windows and his arms around her, Donna felt something she hadn't felt in years, truly alive. Utterly, completely alive. The guilt hovered at the edges of her consciousness, but it couldn't compete with the overwhelming joy of being seen, really seen, for the first time in decades. She would tell Michael the truth when she returned home. She owed him that honesty, at least. But she also owed herself this happiness, this awakening. Some might call it selfish. She preferred to think of it as finally, after all these years, putting herself first. Diana had submitted this story to the workshop anthology. It would be published with her name on it. Physical evidence that she'd created herself, documenting her own betrayal. The final PI report arrived on July 25. Diana was scheduled to return home on July 28. The report was 147 pages long, with hundreds of photos, hours of audio and video recordings, witness statements, financial documents, digital logs. Everything organized, indexed, and cross-referenced. I read the entire report in one sitting. It took me 6 hours. By the end, I felt nothing. No anger, no sadness, just a cold, clear certainty about what needed to happen next. My marriage was over. Not because I was ending it, it had already ended. Probably months ago, maybe even a year ago. I was just making it official. It was time to disappear. If this story hit you in a way, comment below, would you confront or disappear? Hit like and subscribe for more stories about choosing yourself.